What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to GA Fan TV. I hope the form is good. I hope the form as well. So here we go then. Match day 2 of the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship group stages. Some big games happening this weekend across the country. 8 games to preview from the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. And we'll also be looking ahead to the, final group games from the Tailteann Cup as well. Still a lot to be decided, obviously, in the Tailteann Cup. So 16 games in total to run through today, and the group stages have kind of been split in the last couple of weeks. You've had one group of teams playing, other group of sides playing, but this week all of the group stage teams are in action, and all of the Tailteann Cup teams are in action as well. And when you look at the amount of games that are on TV this week, I mean, goodness gracious me, I mean, this is a weekend to just absolutely chill on the couch, get the popcorn out, get whatever you're into, the pizza out, and just watch all these games. And hopefully they're good, and hopefully they're great. It's definitely not a weekend to be out in the weather, out at the beach or any of that crack. Like, get yourself inside and watch the games. And even better, if you have a lovely back garden, get out in your back garden and watch the games. Or go to the beach, bring the tea, bring the bleeding yolk with you or something. I really don't know, but very excited for this weekend's games. And Dublin versus Kildare, I don't know if I'm really excited for that, to be honest with you, but here we go. It's the preview. So we'll start things off by looking at Group 1 of the All-Ireland group stage. So we'll remind ourselves of actually how the group looks. So you've got Mayo and Cork, both sitting in first and second with 2 points, and Louth are in third with 0 points. Kerry are obviously bottom of the group. It'd be great to see the group end that way as a Dublin man, but I highly doubt it, in fairness. Starting with Cork versus Kerry, the game obviously taking place in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. I mean, look, Kerry's a weird one. Like, they've been a bit like Dublin at times this year, in the sense that they've just had some very poor performances, and like, it's mad. Like, the 2 All-Ireland favourites still, according to the bookies, are both Kerry and Dublin, and like, there's been a lot of inconsistency about both sides. Both teams have been getting beat. Both sides haven't looked great. I mean, Dublin haven't got bet too much this year, in fairness, but I mean, we've been playing obviously lower quality opposition. Yeah, it's been a strange one for Kerry. It's been a strange season, and like, that performance against Mayo, it was very flat and very poor, and there does seem to be an over-reliance on David Clifford, in my opinion. We haven't really seen the best of Paddy Clifford. Like, Tony Brosnan looked great against Clare, but then sort of went missing in the match versus Mayo. You're looking at Paul Ganey still in the side even after all these years, and in fairness, he actually had a decent game in the last day, in my opinion, versus Mayo. So yeah, it's a strange one for Kerry. Like, Cork will come in knowing that this is a free hit for them. You know, this is a free hit because they obviously beat Louth. You wouldn't expect Louth to get anything from either Kerry or Mayo, but from a Cork perspective, like, they'll probably be targeting this game more so than the Mayo game. Like, if Cork could get a draw here or get some sort of result, you know, what a result it would be for Cork football. Brian Hurley's obviously back in the side now. Brian O'Driscoll, obviously not the ex-rugby player, the current Cork footballer. Looks like a very good player as well. In fairness, he scored a 1-1, I think, the last day. Cork have got a lot of tidy footballers. Conor Corbett came off the bench and scored a goal for Cork, not for Louth, contrary to what RTE thought in the Sunday game. I'm not too sure how they managed to completely mix that one up, but I suppose that's kind of what they do, in fairness. I think for Kerry, though, there has to be a bite. There has to be a response. You're playing your big rivals in Cork. Interesting enough, David Clifford actually rarely has a good game against Cork when you look back through the last couple of seasons. He's actually been marked out of the game on a couple of occasions, and even in that defeat in 2020, he didn't play particularly well that day either. So you're looking at it from a Kerry perspective, like, they need to step up, they need to show their best here, they need to bring some of their under fringe players into the game. Sean O'Shea was quite quiet the last day as well. You're expecting him to click into gear, because if Kerry are serious All-Ireland contenders, they need to brush Cork and Louth to one side and just focus on what will be a preliminary round game, because you'd imagine Mayo will win their final 2 games. But if there's a slip up from Mayo, Kerry need to be there to capitalise on that. And from a Kerry perspective, I fancy them to be too strong for Cork. I think they'll beat them by 5 points. I think Cork will ruffle their feathers from time to time, and I can imagine Cork will sit in, try and frustrate Kerry, but I think Kerry will eventually pick off Cork and win the game by 5 points. Mayo versus Louth. I think for Louth, unfortunately, you're almost prolonging their exit in some ways. Like, it's just going to be very, very tough for them to get anything. They obviously lost in that match versus Cork at Páirc Tailteann, which was, I suppose, supposed to be their home game, with the fact that RD isn't big enough. You're just looking at it and thinking, going down to Castlebar, where there's going to be a carnival atmosphere, especially after Mayo beat Kerry, like Mayo just always seem on it. The only thing you would say is maybe Mayo's heads might start to turn now towards an All-Ireland quarter-final, or I mean, I'd highly doubt they're going to end up in the preliminary round. They'd have to lose a game now at this stage. Just a reminder, you finish first in your group, you go straight through to the quarter-final. You finish second or third, you go into a preliminary quarter-final, sort of like a round of 12 type match. So I think as long as Mayo could rotate a little bit here, maybe Cillian O'Connor might come back in if he's fit, although I think I'm hearing that he won't be. Mayo have a great squad. They could rotate players. They could probably give Aidan O'Shea and James Carr maybe a rest. Try out a couple of other lads, like maybe Jason Doherty might come back into the side. They might make a couple of changes here or there. Could Padraig O'Hara start? Maybe even a start for Paddy Durkin or Kevin McLaughlin. But I think at the same time, I'd imagine Mayo, I don't think they will rotate, to be honest with you. I think there'll be a mix in there. Like, there'll still be a lot of experienced heads, maybe one or two changes. But I think ultimately for Louth, it's just, look, Mickey Hart will bring a game plan. They'll try and frustrate Mayo for as long as they can, but arguably, like, this is the toughest game Louth will have faced all year, in my opinion. And we saw what Dublin did to them, and Dublin have been absolutely dreadful at the best of time this season. So I think it will be comfortable enough for Mayo. I think I'm going to say 10 points. I've got a feeling it might be a little bit less, just with the fact that Mayo might maybe start looking ahead, but I think if Mayo have it in them, they could probably win by more, to be honest with you. But I'm going to go for a 10-point victory for Mayo. Be interesting to see who picks up Samuel Roy and what type of battle happens there. This Mayo defence, though, has been very strong. And whether it's a Sam Callanan that goes on him, a David McBride or someone of that nature, I think Mayo will have the answer and they'll be too strong for Louth and win by 10 points, in my opinion. You've got Westmeath versus Galway and Tyrone versus Armagh. You've got Galway, who've probably been the most consistent team in the country. I feel like every side or every contender so far this year has had their own sort of bumps in the road. Dublin it's been a bit of a roller coaster in Division 2 and Division 1, in the Leinster Championship and obviously the Roscommon game. Mayo were very strong in the league, won a league title, but then obviously lost to Roscommon. Roscommon themselves, I would put them as a contender. They lost to Galway, and even the likes of Tyrone, Derry. Like, there's all been sort of blips and ups and downs in the road. Kerry as well, but Galway's there hasn't been. Look, they obviously had that defeat in the league to Mayo in the league final. They lost to Roscommon as well, but like, Galway so far in the Championship, they've just grinded their way through games. They've just dogged their way through games. It hasn't been pretty, it hasn't been brilliant, but it's been effective. Matthew Tierney in flying form, one of the footballers of the country so far. Damien Comer, who's sort of playing a more like Michael Murphy role now, sort of going around sort of the centre of the park, setting plays up around them, and sort of being on the end of big chances as well. Galway they're a very strong, physical, tough team. They look like a team that's going to be very tough to beat, to be honest with you. I think Galway are serious contenders. My worry for Westmeath is that they gave so much to beat Armagh. Like, they put their absolute body on the line. They went full tilt. Ronan O'Toole was sensational that day, scoring 1-1. John Heselton, very good as well. Ray Kennellan had to do a lot of great work. Kevin Maguire, I thought, done a great job in a fullback as well. But for Westmeath, they gave absolutely everything in that game. Would it be in Cusack Park? Look, maybe Westmeath fans will, try and back their team. But I think Galway will just grind their way through it. And I think for Galway, like, their heads will probably start, looking ahead as well towards an All-Ireland quarter-final. Obviously, they still have Armagh on the horizon, in fairness. But I think Galway, look, they'll have too much for Westmeath. I don't think this game will be as close as what it was when Westmeath played Armagh. And I fancy Galway to win by 6 points. I don't think it will be pretty. I don't think it'll be the best of games. But I think, do you know what? I'm actually going to go a little bit more. I'm going to go 8 points for Galway. I just think Westmeath would have put in a huge amount of energy, both physically and mentally, against Armagh. And unfortunately for them, I think Galway will be waiting like an alligator in the Liffey, and they will just crush this Westmeath side by 8 points. Tyrone versus Armagh, I suppose it's the first sort of very evenly matched game, you would say, from the group stages so far this weekend, and definitely one of the games I'm very excited for when you look at both of these two teams, and when you look at sort of Tyrone's, or when you look at the history between these two down the years. And obviously this was the game where Armagh bet Tyrone last year and obviously knocked them out of the Championship. Armagh could deal a huge blow to Tyrone as well in Healy Park. I mean, if Armagh were to beat them, it would pretty much leave it down to the final day for Tyrone and Westmeath to get that final third place. But Armagh, it's such a hard one with them. Like, they look like the type of side that have all the right ingredients to be an All-Ireland contender, but they just can't seem to put it all together, and they seem to have very good moments in games, but also very bad moments in games. Like Rian O'Neill, as we very well know, like he is one of the best footballers in the country, sensational player. Andrew Murnan, to be fair, stepped up hugely the last day and sort of dragged them over the line. Connor Turbot obviously got the goal. Like with Armagh, I think the problem with Armagh is they have a lot of the same type of players. Like you have Rian O'Neill, very skillful, tricky footballer. I think Stephen Campbell is like that. Connor Turbot, Ross McQuillan, Andrew Murnan. Like they sort of need players. Like I look at Galway, for example, and you've got a Matthew Tierney who's setting things up around them. Damien Comer is obviously dropping a lot deeper. We are seeing Rian O'Neill do something very similar at times as well, sort of drop more so around midfield. But like you even look at Mayo, for example, you've got a Jordan Flynn who's a big, tall, rangy, sort of unorthodox type forward. You've got Aidan O'Shea who's going to peel around the corners and try set things up around them and just be a nuisance in and around the square. Armagh seem to have almost like the same type of players, and that is a bit of a worry because like they have a lot of flashy and skillful players, but I don't know if they have very sort of big, strong. I think Rory Grugan's one, but apart from that, like they seem to lack that clinical edge, in my opinion, and that physicality around the park. And the problem for Armagh is that like they put so much into that Ulster Championship, they barely scraped over the line against Westmeath. Tyrone will be waiting in the lurches, waiting for the ambush, in my opinion. And like the problem for Tyrone is that, outside of their starting 15, they don't have a huge amount of players who can come off the bench and change a game. But look, in fairness to Tyrone, like they battled hard against Galway. They didn't throw the towel in when they obviously went down to 14 men. You were a little bit worried for Tyrone. Like you felt like Galway at home in Pearse Stadium could really sort of put the foot on the neck of this Tyrone side, but that wasn't the case. Tyrone dug deep, they stayed in the game, and they battled. And I think as long as they bring that same battle, that same fight that we've seen from Tyrone against Galway and at times so far this season, I think they will have enough to just about edge it, in my opinion. The only worry about Tyrone is that, similar to Armagh, there is a lot of inconsistency in there. Defensively, they can be quite vulnerable. We've seen Monaghan open them up at times. In the league, they were very up and down. I think, with the fact that it is sort of almost, it's getting into the business end of the championship. If Tyrone lose this, they're going to probably be a third place team going into that preliminary round qualifier. And when you look at some of the teams that might be in there that could finish second, it could be a worry for Tyrone. So I fancy Tyrone to have enough, in my opinion. I think Darren McCurry, very strong forward. Dara Canavan, sort of, and that's what I mean with Armagh. Like Armagh, do they have a Dara Canavan type player who's going to link it together, set plays up around them, track back and defend? That's the worry for Armagh. They seem to have a lot of the same type of players. So I fancy Tyrone by, I think, 2 points is what I'll go with. I think it will be close. I think Armagh, I'm going to go for 4 points actually. I think it'll be a little bit more comfortable for Tyrone in Healy Park. I think they'll win it going down the home stretch. Armagh will certainly have their moments, but I think Tyrone will just be that little bit stronger and they'll win it by 4 for me. Moving on to Group 3, you've got Kildare versus Dublin happening in Nolan Park in Kilkenny, and Roscommon against Sligo, which will be happening at the Hyde. To get the Roscommon and Sligo game over and done with, first of all, look, Sligo, in fairness, that was a huge amount of, it was some result against Kildare, and it gives them a strong chance at sort of getting out of this group, potentially finishing third, which would be, it'd be great for Sligo to be potentially one win away from a All-Ireland quarter-final. And look, in fairness to Sligo, the likes of Niall Murphy, Sean Carabine, who've looked very good, some of the under-20s maybe potentially making a bit of a breakthrough now with the fact that championship is over. But I think, like for Roscommon, they would have put so much into that Dublin game, and they might be a little bit leggy, which might give Sligo a bit of confidence. But I think ultimately, Roscommon at home, feel-good factor with Davy Burke, they'll be too strong, way too strong. German Murta, Kieran Murta, the Murtas are in absolute flying form at the moment. I've no idea what those lads are eating for breakfast, but whatever it is, if they could send it my way, that would be absolutely brilliant. But Roscommon will be too strong. I think Sligo, to be honest with you, I think they'll just sit in a little bit what they did against Galway, be conservative, try and keep the score down as much as possible, try and frustrate Roscommon, try and almost play Roscommon at their own game, a bit like what Roscommon did to Dublin at Croke Park. But I think Roscommon will be too wide for it. They'll have too much quality. They'll have too much good players who can stretch the pitch. And I think it'll be tough for Sligo to keep Roscommon out. So I think Sligo will be obviously hoping Dublin can do them a favour. And obviously, they'll be trying to eye up that third position, potentially with who sort of loses the least group games. But I'm going to say Roscommon by 5. I think Sligo will be competitive. They'll stick with Roscommon for large parts, and Roscommon might take their eye off the ball once or twice, but I think the Rossies will have too much and they'll beat Sligo by 5. We've got Kildare versus Dublin in Nolan Park, as we were saying before. Still undecided whether to go to the game, to be honest with you. It's kind of looking like I probably won't go to this one, to be perfectly honest. To be fair, I think Kildare fans probably have it in for me, so probably best to stay away, in all honesty. I don't think I'll be allowed on the train back. They'll be trying to keep me in Kilkenny. But yeah, look, it's been a few days now since the Dublin Roscommon game. I have since watched it back. To be honest with you, we looked even worse on the TV than we did actually at the game. Yeah, I don't have a huge amount of confidence in this Dublin side anymore. I really, really don't. It's just, there seems to be a lack of urgency, a lack of want, a lack of fight. The togetherness isn't there. The system doesn't look right. And I don't know what it is with this Dublin side, but we've so many great players, from Paul Mannion to Costello to, Sean Bugler, Niall Scully, Dean Rock coming off the bench, but all of them are just playing really poor. Even Kilkenny as well was pretty poor the last day. I don't think there was a Dublin player who actually came out of I think Keane Murphy was the only player I thought who had a good game for Dublin the last day. Michael Fitzsimons when he came back as well. I thought to keep Roscommon's goal threat out, we did all right, but generally, for Dublin, it's just an absolute mess at the minute, and you just don't know. We could go out and absolutely steamroll Kildare and just completely batter them from pillar to post, but we could equally go out, put in a hugely drab performance, and Kildare could possibly nick it, maybe even nick a draw. The thing is with Kildare though, Kildare aren't really great either, are they? You would have fancied them to beat Sligo. I seen the highlights of that game. I didn't obviously see the game live because it wasn't on GA Go. But you're looking at it and thinking, Kildare playing at a higher level than Sligo, you would have fancied them to beat Sligo. And from speaking to Kildare fans and hearing thoughts of Kildare fans, a lot of them weren't happy with their setup, with how they went. They were far too conservative against Sligo, a bit like how they played against Dublin. And you'd imagine, they'll set up similar to how they did against Dublin. That plan almost worked the last time, so they'll probably try and do it again and try and do it better, and this time in a smaller pitch as well. Interesting thing with Kildare is that obviously Jimmy Hyland is out injured, I think, at the minute. Daniel Flynn doesn't seem to be starting. I don't even think he came off the bench the last day. So they are missing players, Kildare, and that definitely probably is having an effect on them. Paddy Woodgate scored 4 points the last day. Dara Kirwan, from watching him at club level with Nace, seen him play up close a couple of times against Kilmacud Crokes in the last couple of years, and looks like a very good footballer. And he could cause a lot of damage for Dublin. To be honest with you, I'm going to predict Dublin to win by 2, but it's almost I feel like Kildare will lose the game and Dublin won't win it. I think Kildare will have their moments. They'll probably go in front at certain parts. I think it will be a similar game to the one at Nolan, the one at Croke Park. I think Dublin will have a bit more control this time, and I don't think will be. I think you'd imagine there'd be a bounce from the performance against Roscommon. We bounced against Louth and looked good in that game, but I don't know. It's just my head is bamboozled with Dublin at the best of times. We've definitely come back to the pack. The great days or the glory days definitely seem over. I do stand by what I said in my match reaction. I think Dublin getting beyond an All-Ireland quarter-final this year would genuinely surprise me, unless we somehow got a handy draw in the quarter-final. But I don't even see that happening, because I think we'll be going into the quarter-final probably unseeded. So look, I'm hoping Dublin respond. I'm hoping we put the foot to the throat of Kildare. I'm expecting big performances. Kilkenny, Brian Fenton, Cormac Costello, Paul Mannion. Paul Mannion in particular, poor day the last day, needs to step up now. These lads need to start clicking into gear. I know people are saying Dublin are trying to get ready to peak for an All-Ireland quarter-final. I think, look, it's getting close. It's getting close to that. And if we don't get our act together soon, we mightn't even get to an All-Ireland quarter-final. So we need to go out there, put in a performance, put in a statement, especially after all that was said by Glenn Ryan and the sort of dispute between Kildare and Dublin in the last couple of weeks. Go out there and prove that Croke Park isn't as much as a factor as what people think. We're in a neutral stadium. Let's put them to bed and possibly take Kildare out of the championship. But I think it will be, Kildare will have their moments. I just don't really trust this Dublin side. I'm going to go for a 2-point win. It could be more, but that's what I'm going to go for. Moving on to Group 4, you've got Monaghan versus Clare and Donegal versus Derry. Monaghan versus Clare, first of all, happening in Clonus. Monaghan should have probably got over the line against Derry. I mean, they were a couple of points up going down the home stretch. They competed very well with Derry. They matched them around the pitch. And Monaghan, like, there seems to be more of a consistency about Monaghan this year under Vinnie Corey. And I think, we're seeing more of that this year. They're not as reliant on Conor McManus anymore. Like, he obviously didn't score the last day. Conor McCarthy scored 3 points. Micheál Bannigan was very good as well. And to not have Conor McManus as well, who effectively came on as a late substitute. He came on for the final few minutes. So, yeah, I think Monaghan will be too strong for Clare. I think for Clare, unfortunately, I think they put a lot into staying in the league. They put a lot into getting to that Munster final. Blown away by Kerry, missed a lot of chances against Donegal, missed a lot of opportunities. Like, Donegal were there for the taking, in my opinion. So I just don't see Clare doing anything in this one. Like, could Monaghan take their eye off the ball? I don't really see them. I think they need to win this one. This needs to be a win because they need to give themselves the best possible opportunity and possibly winning this group. You know what I mean? Like, they could possibly beat Clare and Donegal more than what Derry do, because Derry are going away to Donegal, let's not forget. In this round of fixtures, Ballybuffet is always a tough place to go. So I think Monaghan will be too strong. I'm going to say by 6 points. I think they'll have way too much, regardless of what the situation is with McManus, whether he plays or not. Carl O'Connell, very good the last day. They have a lot of options, this Monaghan side, and I think they will be too strong for Clare. So yeah, I'll go with Monaghan by 6. And then we've got Donegal versus Derry. Like, there's this part of me that has a sneaky feeling about Donegal. I have no idea why, to be honest with you. Like, they haven't been great at all this year. Like, even in their win versus Clare, like, Clare more so lost the game rather than Donegal won it. Like Donegal do have good players, like Kieran Thompson, 4 points the last day. Good to see him sort of back on the side, shooting the lights out. Oisin Gallen, Caelan McGonigal. Like, they have good players, Rory O'Donnell as well. And that win will give them a bit of confidence. Like, at home in Ballybuffet, it's always a tough place to go. I don't think this is a foregone conclusion for Derry. I think Derry might actually struggle in this game. I think Derry have put a lot into the championship. They put a lot into Ulster. They looked very sort of, I don't know, again, like, I wouldn't say they would look flat against Monaghan, but there wasn't really, like, Monaghan were bringing a lot of problems to Derry, and Derry weren't finding the solutions. And that's interesting. You do wonder, with the change of management, with things that have happened behind the scenes with Derry, like, you just wonder, could that catch up with them? They put a lot into the league. They went full tilt. They haven't really, their players haven't had much rest either. So I do have a feeling Donegal might do something, but the problem is, like, Donegal don't really score a huge amount of points. They sort of average around 10, 12, 14 points per game. I think Derry will have enough with goals. I think goals will be enough for Derry. So I think I'm going to go for Derry by a point. As I said, I've got a sneaky feeling Donegal might do something here, especially at home. It's a local rivalry. What happened between these two in the Ulster final last year, but I'm gonna back Derry. I just don't have full confidence. I think it's a big prediction to go with Donegal. This season has had a lot of shocks. I don't see this one being a shock. I think Derry will have enough. I'll go Derry by a point. Moving on to the Tailteann Cup, and first of all, looking at Group 1, we've got Cavan versus Offaly, Laois versus London. You'll see the table on the screen there. Cavan with 4 points, already through, but in what order remains to obviously be seen. They are guaranteed in the top 2, in fairness. You've got Offaly in second, Laois in third. It very much goes down to, I suppose, Cavan and Offaly. Can Cavan do the Laois men a favour? It's an interesting one. I think Offaly will have enough here. I think they'll be waiting in the dark in the Cavan bushes, and I think they're gonna upset Cavan in Longford, which I suppose is a neutral stadium. I think Offaly, to be honest with you. I think Cavan are already through. I suppose this would take Offaly up to first. I think there's more on the line here for Offaly than there is for Cavan. Like, score difference could possibly come into it. Laois would have to beat London by a good amount, actually, in fairness, when you actually look at the league table. I'm going to go for Offaly. Like, I think Offaly, I know they didn't have a great performance against Laois, and Laois probably surprised us by nicking that draw. But I think Offaly, they're thinking further ahead in this competition. Cian Farrell on his day, what a fantastic footballer he is. And I think Offaly are the type of team, in my opinion, that relish to the big occasion, and they'll relish playing this Cavan side. The fact that Cavan are one of the favourites, I just fancy Offaly to go down there, turn them over and get a big victory. We've got Laois versus London. That's happening in Parnell Park, which is interesting, just up the road from myself, so maybe I might make a trek down and watch this game potentially. But I think Laois will be too strong here. Obviously the whole permutations, like a win for Laois is enough for them to get in. They'll be one of the better third placed Finnish sides in the Tailteann Cup. So I think they'll have enough to get out of the group. I think they'll have enough. Look, Kieran Lillis, Mark Barry, Evan O'Carroll, they've got good footballers. They've got good players Laois. Good enough players to win this game. I think there is a lot of inconsistency about Laois at the best of times. Are they as good as what people would have believed a couple of years ago? Probably not. But I think they will have too much for London, and I think they'll beat them by, I'm going to say, by 8 points. Score difference could be important to take them above Offaly, should Offaly get beat by Cavan. So I'm going to say Laois. I'm going to say Laois by 7. Moving on to Group 2 then, you've got Meath against Down and Tipperary against Waterford. Meath and Down is an interesting one, but I'll probably go for Down. Seeing this game is actually in Parnell Park as well on at 1 o'clock. That game does interest me, to be fair. Maybe I might actually make the journey down. Yeah, I think Down will be too strong. I think, look, Meath did rotate quite a lot against Waterford, but I think Down, in my opinion, will have too much here. In fairness to Meath, when they've come up against any sort of side of any quality this year, they've very much wilted, other than the opening 2 games in the league. It's a big game for Meath. I think if Meath can get a win here, it would give them a lot of confidence. It would put them straight through to the quarterfinals. But I fancy Meath, or fancy Down rather, I should say, to be too strong. I think Pat Harver and Andrew Gilmore are going to be too tricky and tasty for this Meath and young Meath defence, in my opinion. It's a young side, this Meath team. Colm O'Rourke's obviously trying a lot of different things out. I think Down by 4. Look, I don't think it's the end of the world for Meath. I think they'll get to the quarterfinals anyway. But I will go for Down to win it by 4. Tipperary versus Waterford is a game that, pretty much, I mean, it's mad because the winner of this could actually potentially be one of the best third place teams. So it's actually not a dead rubber as such. I'm actually going to go for Waterford to get the victory, and that might sound a bit bizarre. But the reason being is that I think Waterford contended well against Meath. They were leading early on. They actually done all right against Down as well in moments. They started quite bright in those games. They have a team that have played together for quite a while, and Dara Corcoran, Conor Murray, Jason Curry. So I actually fancy Waterford. I think Tipperary are just, they only hit 6 points versus Down. I just don't think they're at it. Unfortunately, there's been a huge turnover of players, injuries. I think Tipperary want the season to end, and I think there'll be more fight and actually more battle in this Waterford side. So yeah, I'm actually going to go for Waterford. I think the game is in a neutral stadium. I'm going to check that quickly. Actually, it's going to be in Páirc Uí Chaoimh actually. At 1 o'clock. To be fair, Tipperary might have more experience of playing in that ground, but I'd fancy Waterford to be too strong and win the game. I'm gonna say by 2 points. 2 point victory for Waterford. Group 3 certainly has a lot still to play for. Limerick sitting on top with 4 points. Longford and Carlow both there with 2 points. Looking at Limerick first of all, I think fortunately for Wicklow, it's just all tailed off completely for Oisin McConville and this Wicklow side. Whether Oisin McConville is just dying to get back in the hot seat and do a bit of punditry, so he doesn't want to go through, I don't really know. But in fairness, I think Wicklow have had a great season getting out of Division 4. I think they put a lot into it. They obviously have Kevin Quinn injured at the moment as well, which is a big loss. Limerick are pretty much already through. They have the head-to-head win over Longford and Carlow as well. So Limerick can't finish below 4 points. They can't finish below first, so they're already through. So there might be an element of rotation. Maybe that might give Wicklow a chance, but I'm going to say Limerick by 3. And Longford versus Carlow, a game to decide who gets in the top 2. Things are beginning to move maybe for Longford now under Paddy Christie. That was a big win for them against Wicklow the last time. Kenny got 8 or 2 goals. Keelan McGann in there. A few new players that I wouldn't really recognise from Longford. But fair play, that was a pretty good victory. Maybe they'll have some potential. For Carlow, this result against Limerick. That's going to be huge. Some experience. I think Longford, him getting himself there is important. I think Longford Wexford, they'll be too strong for Carlow. I'm going to say by 3 points. Moving on to Group 4 then, still definitely a lot to play for here, although Antrim and Fermanagh are very much guaranteed to finish in the top 2 in fairness. You've got Fermanagh taking on Antrim. That game is happening in the Athletic Grounds, and you've got Wexford against Leitrim, which is also happening in Croke Park on the Sunday. So for Fermanagh, first of all, going up against Antrim. Big win for Fermanagh the last time out against Leitrim. They very much needed that, in fairness. They've got a whole array of players who can do the damage. Ryan Lyons, very good the last day out, 1-5. For him, Sean Quigley on the score sheet with 4 points as well. Darragh McGurn, as we've seen, has come on very strong for this Fermanagh side this season. And Ultan Kelm has been very impressive as well. So I think Fermanagh, I suppose it's not at home, obviously it's in Armagh. Antrim maybe like 2 wins from 2, they've looked very strong. I'm going to go for Fermanagh in my opinion. Look, Antrim, in fairness, what a season they're having in the Tailteann Cup. Like they're guaranteed to finish in the top 2 anyway. Don't think it will be the end of the world to finish in second. I think Antrim will put it up to Fermanagh for large parts and they'll have good moments, but I'm going to go for Fermanagh to win. I'm going to say by 3 points. And Wexford versus Leitrim at Parnell Park. I'm expecting a kick from Leitrim here. Like 2 very disappointing losses in a row. Like it's not going to look good for Andy Moran if he loses this one. Like especially after what happened against New York a couple of weeks ago as well, or a couple of months ago. Look, I'm still of the idea that you keep Andy Moran there like as manager, because you know he's a young manager. He'll learn more as it goes on, and I think next season Leitrim will be serious contenders to get out of Division 4. Wexford, like, you know, overly reliant on Ben Brosnan, who must be at least 46 at this stage. Like, the guy is just still knocking around, which is absolutely mental. But here we go. Like, I think Leitrim will have enough to turn over Wexford. I think Wexford, they're just so flat at the best of times. And I think Leitrim, like, there has to be a kick here. I know Leitrim have looked poor in their opening 2 games, but I'm expecting a kick. I'm expecting a response. If there's no response here, I'd be worried, to be honest with you. Neutral stadium, Parnell Park. You know, I think Leitrim will just about edge it by 2 points. So there we go. There are my predictions for this weekend's games. Obviously a lot of games, 16 games in total this weekend. So an absolute monster of football to look forward to. And as I said before, definitely a weekend to cancel all your plans and do nothing but watch these games. And there'll certainly be a lot of content out this week as well. There might be a watch along thrown in there for one of the matches, and certainly plenty of match reactions and everything else. Very much looking forward to a lot of the games, in fairness. So yeah, let me know your thoughts, your opinions on this weekend's games. I suppose player of the week and bet of the week. Waterford beating Tipperary, I guess, is a bet of the week. I mean, Donegal beating Derry. I just have a feeling something could happen there. I am going to stick with my Derry prediction, but if there's a shock to come, it could be that. Kildare to beat Dublin as well. Like, you'd probably get great odds on that. And the way Dublin are playing, it's not inconceivable, in fairness. So yeah, maybe those would be the ones to look at. Player of the week, I'm going to go for Derek Canavan to have a big game against Armagh. I think he's been in very good form so far this year, and I think he'll have a big impact in guiding the Red Hand to the victory. So I'm going to say Tyrone, Derek Canavan, player of the week, in my opinion. I think he'll be strong enough to win that, in my opinion. So yeah, let me know your opinions, your thoughts in the comments down below. Let me know who you think will win a lot of these matches. And yeah, like, subscribe, and we'll speak to you all soon.